Welcome once again to the Unattached.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls of all ages, small animals.
Women, dogs, yes. Anybody who happens to be listening.
Anything with ears.
She is Theresa Hresga.
He's Ryan Stanley.
We are your hosts for the next 20 plus minutes. Thank you again for everybody who's checked in following or the previous weeks up until today. You were just saying something to me before we started.
Crisscross applesauce.
No, besides that.
Besides the crisscross and the applesauce.
Time.
It was about time. It was a question that I don't really know if I understand completely what I was asking. But I looked at you and I said, Ryan, why do things take time?
Yeah. And I said, well, that's a great question because it's something I've been thinking about as well. Meaning...
Of course, like you do.
Right.
You know.
And my initial answers, and what we just started talking before we said, let's just make this a podcast, was, I mean, that's as humans, I think that's how we perceive things. And if we didn't know it, if we didn't look at things through time, if everything happened immediately, all the time, then there would be no living. There would be no wanting. There would be no... It's like Neil deGrasse...
Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yeah.
The last E is pretty silent.
Well, when I read it online,
we'll give it a life.
In my head, there's an E there.
Understood.
Thanks. And, but he said, there was a whole video with him, and he's like, if you could live forever, nothing would get done, because nobody would be in any type of a hurry.
Well, yeah, but...
That was one of the things that he said.
He did, and he also, I think I saw the same clip, and he talks about how nothing would have value, because there's no sense of urgency, there's no feeling of loss.
Yep.
So to give things value, you have to feel as if though you're going to lose it. Like there's a rarity, there's a scarcity element.
Or there's X amount of time to get it done.
Which creates a scarcity mentality on some level.
Yeah. So that's it, everybody. That's why. That's our call for today.
And we're out.
That's why things take time.
So long. But this is ridiculous. No. But to your point, what you had just said, everything happening all at once all the time. Everything is happening all at once all the time.
Right.
Like life is happening right now. As I'm speaking to you, as you're listening, perceiving, like everything, it's all happening right now. There is nothing else other than right now.
So, therefore, to answer your question, actually it doesn't take so much time. It takes the exact amount of time that is occurring.
Okay, I get messed up when I look at a calendar. Because, I live and die by my calendar for the most part. Like, I schedule in time to do nothing.
Right,
like,
good.
Quote, unquote.
It's important.
Spontaneity time.
Yeah.
Very spontaneous.
Quick, go! This is it. It's on my calendar for the next 7-8 minutes.
It's gotta be spontaneous.
I'm spontaneous right now.
Let's do something crazy for 6.5 minutes.
This is not spontaneous enough.
No, it's obviously not that ridiculous.
Right.
But I do schedule...
But maybe it is.
It's a little ridiculous. Okay. And it's so bad. I mean, I'm attached to the value of time and the fact that I know that I am not here forever. I am here for a limited engagement, maybe somewhere. My goal is a solid hundo up there, like a healthy hundo.
Yeah.
And then I can start all, the hip dysplasia and all that stuff that comes along with being over 100.
Right. If you want to, you don't have to.
It's on the docket. We'll reevaluate later on.
In 2088.
Yeah, right. That's a good point. But it's one of those things where there's so much to do, Luke Iorio, he always looked at me and he said it a couple of times. He's the president of IPEC, used to be the CEO. And he always said, he's like, Theresa, like, you'll never get bored. Like, there's too much on planet Earth for you to do. You'll never get bored. But you do really kind of want to focus on something so you have a direction and a path. And you're building something. But I look at my calendar and I see these half-hour or 1-hour chunks of time. I see these days. And sometimes when you look at it, it's like, oh my gosh, that calendar is like a physical manifestation of my time. And I feel like everything that I put onto my calendar, it's like, it's a real choice to put it there.
Right.
So it's really valuing my time, but we were just saying with certain things, I actually commit to them and schedule them in because I really don't want to do them, but I kind of have to on some level.
Or feel obligated to, depending on.
Well, parts of my job I kind of have to do to keep my job, so there's an obligation there, yeah. But that's a piece of my time that's going towards something else. And it feels
So,
like
but in the grand
cost
scheme of
time.
things, it does feel that way.
Yeah.
But to your initial question, why do things take so much time to occur? It's because there's many pieces, I think, what I'm hearing you say. So sometimes those pieces aren't necessarily what we are looking for the outcome, right? So if you're saying, hey, I want to have this, I want to exercise and have this completely quote unquote perfect body, right? But you start off and you're the opposite.
Well, I'm pretty perfect as it is.
I know.
So this
I'm
is a
referring to
terrible
other
example.
people altogether. And like the day 3 when they're doing exercising and they're not really, it's not working out so well and they're winded and just sore.
Yeah.
That's part of what takes the time.
Okay.
But it's not saying that it's not still occurring.
Okay,
The result is
so
on the other side.
this is actually a very relevant example because I have recently decided that I need to fall in love with running.
Right.
It's been a struggle, and I need to do this. And I'm realizing the amount of time it has taken me to get to this point, this decision point. It's quite literally been over 2 decades.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I see the more time that I spend running, I've been trying to do a 5K a day. It's like 3 miles. My knees are starting to kind of get a little, angry with me. I got one that's like a little lingering. So, like I have to adjust. But I'm spending this time to get this result. And it's like I literally put in my calendar like 3-mile run, 3-mile run, go to the gym, run. And it's a very interesting progression because like right now I feel like I've been running forever.
Right.
But then I look at my calendar, I'm like, oh,
it's only been a couple weeks.
Spent 6 hours running in the last 2 weeks. Right. What else could I have done with that 6 hours?
Well, and that's when,
yes,
to your point earlier, it comes about being attached, right? So you're attached to that you could have done something else, or as some might say, you should have done something else.
Oh, but we won't say that.
I wouldn't say that.
No, you could.
I could say that, but I wouldn't.
But that is the thing you are working on. Very good, sir.
Thank you. But it is, so it's about attachment. Really, it all comes down to it all.
Yeah.
Right? So you chose to spend that time running.
Yeah.
Based on your intention of being in love with running. And so, was it the best use of your time in, I guess, moving towards your intention? Yeah, it's exactly what you're supposed to do.
Sure. I think it's the mental attachment to looking at time move on a piece of paper, in my phone, on my calendar, It's an interesting thing.
How would you like that to be otherwise? What would be the perfect solution for this scenario, this challenge?
Well, we were actually talking about this a little bit earlier. I don't know if you remember.
Episode 2?
No, I meant earlier in the day, but we did mention it in episode 2. I think the idea that I usually am very engaged whenever's happening in front of me.
Yeah.
Which has, pros and cons, but I realized like for me in the morning, I have a series of alarms.
Right.
Because otherwise, like I don't look at my watch all the time and I don't look at my phone very often. Hence the whole, I'm working on really responding to text messages and emails and things.
Right.
Because I don't look at my phone very often. So in order to be present but still progress to the next thing that's, that I really should be doing or have to do, or I shouldn't say should.
Could be doing?
I could be doing.
Yeah.
Like in the morning, I'm up pretty early. I train, and then I go home, and I have like a routine that I go through.
Right.
And I...
Train meaning at akido.
Yeah. And I dojo in the morning, but I could hang out there all day with these guys. Like, we would just hang out. And I have an alarm set that says, hey, by this time, you have 5 minutes before you have to be in your car. So instead of standing there looking at my phone and, watching the clock and everything, I have these backups. Like in the morning, it's kind of ridiculous almost. It's like I have an alarm. At this point, I should have probably eaten breakfast. Then, hey, this alarm goes off. You should be at your car.
Right.
Yeah. So it keeps me engaged in like what I'm doing without having to look at my calendar.
Yeah.
But, Ryan, if I can speak...
But you do look at your calendar.
If I could speak very frankly...
Please, it's just me, you, and the rest of the internet.
You're right. Hello, internet. If I can be very frank here, the thought of my calendar not being there, it's like almost terrifying.
So?
I would like to not be like that, but the other thing is I know that if I pick something up, I can get lost in that for years,
So what would it be like if you took 2 days and did not look at a calendar, minus your work appointments and scheduled calls
Okay.
that you have to know
I'm
who to call.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we're talking about a weekend kind of thing here.
Sure.
Do I get to look at my watch and my cell phone? Like,
I don't know. What would happen if you didn't do that?
I don't know. This is a challenge for me.
What would happen? I'm going to challenge you, Theresa.
Oh my God.
It doesn't have to be this weekend, but pick a Saturday.
I'm going to pick a real full day?
Yep. And literally maybe put your phone down at midnight on Friday and pick it up at midnight on Saturday or Sunday morning. What would be different about your life that day? Hypothetically.
Hypothetically? So, my brain is blank right now.
And by the way, I'm not saying that it's a solution or it would even be good. I mean, there's so much information that we get. We're spoiled that we have access to our phones, whether it be just the time, whether it be connectivity, whether it be communication, important stuff. So I don't want to say that, everybody should not have their phone.
I understand.
Yeah.
I think we have an accord here. In college, I had an agenda, like a planner. And I remember, like, I kept that planner. Like, I saved them for a few years because I was impressed with my level of organization. I mean, I took a full year's worth of classes in one summer at 5 universities, working a full-time job. I mean...
And you walked to school uphill both ways?
I rode my bike.
In the snow?
And actually, in New Brunswick, where I would ride my bike, it was uphill both ways. It really was. I will take you there.
I believe you.
There's a low and then there's like a hill. And I used to go one side. I used to go on the south side to where I was going, and it was uphill that way. And then I would go on the north side of this hill, and it was uphill that way as well.
I don't know how you made it. High five. But I digress.
My sister and I, we had one jacket. She wore it halfway
That was it?
there.
Team effort.
But, it's like a thing that I,
Your organization helps you feel comfortable and confident in your day.
Well,
knowing that you're...
Yeah, and it also removes mental clutter. I don't have to remember anything because it's all just there, and I can use that gray matter, that, mental freedom for other whatever. I mean, I think a lot. I read a lot of books.
Yeah.
I'm mildly creative.
My question is, so this kind of started off as a challenge, but now I'm hearing more, not the challenge I put upon you, but earlier in the conversation, a challenge like, I have to look at my calendar or like, use of my time. But now it's really not feeling that way. What I'm hearing, it feels like you're pretty happy with the way it is. So.
Oh, well, yeah, the initial question was why do things take time? Remember I said that I'm not really sure what I meant by that question, but there was more there. I feel like we're talking it through.
Yeah, I think things take time. Things take exactly as much time as they're supposed to, and it's us who decides that it's long. It's our perception of the way that time is going based on expectations or attachments to the outcome happening sooner than we think they should.
Okay, that's a very good point. What about, so we talk about like energy levels, and we should probably do a little bit on that at some point.
Yeah.
But the idea, just to kind of keep it streamlined, flow, being in the zone. I know you're not really the biggest sports fanatic, but
I've lost some weight, so I'm not as big as I used to be, but
there's less of you to love.
That's right.
So in sports, they always talk about like being in the zone, that kind of thing. That's where my mind goes, and like lifting, running, aikido, whatever it is, soccer, basketball. You're like in it, and time doesn't exist. And there are other things that you can do being in a zone. So I guess it's kind of relevant on some level when you're fully, completely engaged in that which is in front of you and happening around you that you are a part of.
Right.
Time does not exist.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a really unique thing because when you have an expectation or anything that's pulling you forward or backward, past and present, and not right here, right now, it creates the illusion of time, when in reality the only thing that actually happens is this, right now, here, in front of you, in that zone.
Have you used this awareness in other areas of your life? I mean, I understand you and I have had many conversations around being present, but I'm curious, the specific, like, have you had a point where you're like, I remember being on the soccer field and that point of flow, how can I use that right now during a work thing or during a, whatever it is else that you might be working on a project or something?
Sure. This is going to sound terrible, but I talk to my sister on the phone a lot.
Yeah.
And in the past, like years ago, I realized that I would be talking to my sister, but I would be like doing other stuff while I was talking to her.
Yep.
And I realized, like, that's not okay. Like, to me, that's not the quality of the relationship and the conversation I want. So, I had to really, I made the decision to literally be so focused and present with her. Um, and when we talk, we'll talk for hours on the phone, just about anything and everything. And she's hilarious and she's really funny and she has such a unique perspective. But I was missing that by being disengaged or just splitting focus. So it's almost like choosing, and that's really carried over into so many aspects of my life. Like my sister taught me how to pay attention to people, you know? She was the only one that I used to talk to on the phone. That's why I'm like choosing her, and my mom actually, but I was always driving when I was talking to my mom, so I'm
doing other stuff.
driving for me is like a flow state anyway.
Yeah.
I love driving.
Yeah.
Like getting that.
I saw you on the highway.
Did you?
On Tuesday.
Really?
I think, yeah, I think I left work, you left work before I did, and maybe ran some errands or something like that.
It was my sister's birthday. I had to pick her up.
Yeah.
I picked her up a card real quick.
So I'm like getting on the parkway, and all of a sudden I just see you coming up from behind me, and then didn't even notice. You were just like busted off to the left, and you were gone. And I was like, damn, she is in the zone.
I love driving. I hope my mother doesn't hear this.
Well,
I'm kidding.
You might have been late for dinner or something. I don't know. But sorry,
yeah.
I digress. But yes, I believe you are in the flow. I've seen it from a detached perspective without actually being in the car.
Sure.
I've witnessed you drive past me.
Well, what about you? Where do you find yourself in that place where quite literally time and space don't exist?
Great question. And honestly, and what I find most, we touched on this, I think, in episode 1, but
Sure.
Really when I'm coaching, I think most.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and it goes back to kind of what you were just saying about with your sister, what I love about coaching is I'm always, and in all ways, no, but seriously, I'm always really, when I'm in the coaching zone, a majority of the time really focused on being present with that person.
Sure.
And what their agenda is, and really learning what I'm hearing so that I can really analyze it, even from a selfish perspective. I enjoy that process of interaction and really kind of learning about their brain and kind of hearing what fears come up in the average human, hearing what limiting beliefs keep us small that are so common. You hear them in so many different conversations that you have.
The assumptions, the interpretations, all of it.
And so to really be listening for all those, I mean, that's when I'm not even paying attention to time. All of a sudden, it's like I'm listening and then I'm responding and reflecting. Because coaching, if done correctly, isn't really giving advice. It's not telling people what to do or how to do it. It's holding their agenda. It's gaining awareness around their perspective and what their agenda is, and then reflecting it back to them and making sure they have clarity around it, from my experience.
Yeah, it's really, and I never understood holding the space. I didn't really understand that for a long time. And then I kind of thought that was like a cop-out to let somebody kind of complain for a while.
Yeah.
But then I really started understanding holding the space as, what you talked about, kind of the normal human person, or just the brain with fear and judgment and self-judgment. And a lot of times, we have these internal dialogues, and to externalize that in a place where, quote unquote, holding the space, there is no judgment.
Right.
There is no nothing, no anything at all other than that which you verbalize and you share. So that coaching space is pretty sacred. So I can definitely see how that would really pull your engagement forward.
And it's neat to see that we all, as humans, have the same fears, and it doesn't matter. And actually, the interesting thing about that space, is that we often have these fears or thoughts or even intentions or goals, whatever, in our mind, but we've never actually said them out loud just because we're thinking about them on ourselves. But when you sit down in a coaching conversation and they ask you very specific questions like, well, what does that look like? And people are like, well, I don't know. I never really thought about it that way. Something as basic as, well, I want to have a successful business. Well, what does that look like? Well, it means I make a lot of money. Well, what kind of money? Or, how is the money being paid? Or, and also when you start getting down to the details, and, so I'm hearing you say where you want to be, but I'm also hearing you say that you are not behaving in a way that's leading you there.
Yeah. There's a lack of alignment, or,
and they don't even know it. It's not that they should know it either, based on their life experience up until this moment.
Well, it's the story that you create, and it's interesting. I've learned that people can be very lazy with their own life. So sometimes it's a comfort to have this idea of like, oh, I'm going to build a business. I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to do this and this and this. And you feel like you're accomplishing something.
Doing something.
Yeah, by thinking about it. Maybe you talk about it. And there's a TED Talk actually about like, don't tell people your goals because you already feel a mild sense of accomplishment, which makes you less likely to follow through. Keep your goals to yourself kind of thing. So it's interesting. you know, I just, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so yes, that's definitely when I'm in flow the most. The other time would be like at a Phish show, like at later time. Sometimes if I'm just in the zone and they're in a really cool jam and I'm just paying attention to one of the things as a parent when I listen to Phish with my kids
Mm-hmm.
who are 3 and 6, I'll say, listen to the like, all right, who can hear the guitar right now?
Oh, that's so
Who
cool.
can hear the drums? So it makes them choose to be present and to
Yeah.
listen to the different patterns that are being created because it's not just a 1, 2, 3 beat. It's constantly growing and changing and because of the style of music, but it gives them an opportunity to be present with the music and listen for specific instruments. So a lot of the time at a show, if I'm people watching and taking in the energy and just letting the music flow and enjoying the time, I'm also very much.
So two things came up. One, and it's really a cool thing to separate out different instruments and different parts of the band. I think Stravinsky there's a piece about learning the orchestra. So they'll play like a massive piece and then they'll play one part of it and they'll introduce like the woodwind section or the string section
Yeah.
or the brass. And it really, all of a sudden, you hear music differently. I took that music, I was into music in college, like, the theory, the history,
Yeah.
like real, like kind of getting into the nitty gritty of it. And I had to study a couple of those pieces, and it changed the way that I listen to music. But I kind of lost it. So thank you for that.
There was a defining moment in my life, and I don't even know how old I was. I was probably 5 or 6 or something like that, maybe a little bit
Sure.
older. But I heard A Day in the Life by the Beatles was playing, but it was playing in another room. And so all I could really hear was the bass line, like kind of coming through the walls or something like that.
Okay.
And when you listen to music as a child, you're used to the chorus and you kind of hear the main part and you kind of understand, like you just sing the song, right? Happy birthday, you sing the songs, whatever. You just the basic melody of the main tune. But all of a sudden, here was a song that I knew that I had heard before, but I was listening to Paul McCartney's bass line and it was not doing the melody; it was doing something different. And so I all of a sudden realized that the difference in the instruments, and it really just had an awakening for me. It's like, oh my gosh, like there's so many different pieces that build
Sure.
up this one thing. So
It's
it
really
just came to
amazing.
mind.
Yeah, it's a completely different experience of music. And
Right?
I'm a sucker for live music. I don't care what's happening in front of me. If there's like a guy with a guitar and like a woman with a mic, like it's amazing. And you can see it. Like you can almost see the sound coming out of their hands and their instruments.
And, it's funny. So I listened to a lot of different types of music, obviously.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the guy who is on Pandora and has run out of stations
it
because
won't
you've
allow me to do
heard
that
it
anymore.
all.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
But like some bluegrass would be playing, or just something a little bit different from mainstream. And I remember my brother saying to me once, like, why are you listening to this? I was like, what do you mean? I was like, so if this was playing right in front of you, wouldn't you sit down and pay attention? Like if somebody was in the room playing this.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, that would be awesome because it's cool. I see the talent of them playing it, and it's difficult to do, and I would pay attention. I was like, well, it's the same thing, but it's in my brain. It's just not a dude in front of me.
It's in my brain.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense.
That's really interesting.
So-
The second thing that I wanted to make mention of, what we were talking about with coaching, to kind of go back a little bit, um, when you were saying that sometimes you think these things, but you've never really talked about it with anyone, you never really said it out loud. One of the things that I know that I do incessantly, to the point where I didn't realize that I also do this in like the world outside of like me being alone, like outside of my car or my apartment or my office, I talk to myself. Like I talk through decisions with Theresa. It's
Yeah.
a joint decision, me and myself.
Right.
And it's a really interesting thing to kind of have that relationship with yourself, because people do think you're a little nutso.
Yeah, Teresa's being a real bitch today. What, Teresa? No, nothing.
No, not you, Theresa.
Yeah,
Other
yeah, yeah.
Theresa. No, I do argue with myself, and I talk over decisions. I don't do the weird. I shouldn't say weird, but some people like they have a lot of value in the putting two chairs across from each other, and they'll sit in one chair and play devil's advocate for the person.
Really? I've never seen that one.
Yeah, it's something that they tell you to do, and I don't know, maybe like certain business development, like when you're
I get it. It makes sense.
talking through stuff, or when you're going through a decision. I've seen coaches ask clients to do things like that, to like quite literally have a conversation with yourself about what you really think. But coaching pulls that out, and instead of it's me and myself, it's me and my coach.
Right.
So it's a really interesting way, because I know one of the things that's really unique about the skill set of coaching is that you can coach yourself. You quite literally ask yourself questions. And the cool thing about it is, the cool thing, and I think also the very uncomfortable and kind of disturbing thing for most people, is that you cannot hide from yourself. No matter how much you want to pretend you don't know something, or pretend you're not in control of it, or pretend that, it's not a big deal.
You always know the truth.
You always know the truth. And you can avoid it and, again, pretend. But when you really just ask yourself a question, I think the question that always follows up any question, before I even answer the question that I really want the answer to, is what am I going to gain by avoiding this?
Right.
You know, and as you put it, and I've really adopted this as like a life view, the gloves are off. Life is happening now.
Right.
So for me to hide and cower from anything that's uncomfortable, that is intolerable, that goes against my ideals, my morals, my ethics, and my code of who I am, it's just not acceptable anymore.
Nor is it serving a purpose. And once you know that what your purpose is, and that are you interested or committed in that purpose?
Exactly. And the thing is, it's you know, if you don't ask yourself, you know, it's just easy to tolerate and ignore. So I got in the habit of, quite literally, from, you know, the quote, coaching yourself, I really started to talk to me all the time.
Nice.
It's going okay.
So far, so good?
So far, so good.
There's a, and I'm totally paraphrasing because maybe you might know better than I do, but there's a quote from Wayne Dyer that is like something along the lines, well, I forget, it's like, he was talking to somebody who just said, well, it's not me who needs help, or it's not me who's stopping me from doing the work that me, or it's, you know, it's all these different things, but, and Dr. Dyer was like, well, then who is it? Let me give them therapy. It turned out like it was like, you know, all these other aspects of life, but really you're the one making the decision on how you show up, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
that
cool.
was a talk.
Yeah.
I remember that talk. I remember he was wearing a funny hat. Yeah, I remember that one. And everyone in the crowd kind of chuckled and was like,
Good point.
Yeah, it's like Tony Robbins has a kind of a same but different. He said, some guy stood up and said like, oh, it took me 15 years to make this decision. And Tony Robbins was like, no. It didn't take you 15 years. It took you a split second. It took you 15 years
to get the balls to do it.
To build the courage to make a decision.
Yeah.
You know? So it's an interesting concept, and it really is you.
So if you could sum up today's podcast, what's your biggest thing?
Oh, come on. Like, it's like asking you to asking me my favorite movie or something.
All right. Well, I will sum it up with, let me try to think what we just talked about.
Well, we talked about time.
Yes. Time is the most valuable commodity, in my opinion. Decide who you want to be and go be it. And it's a Avett Brothers quote. I just put it up on our Instagram, actually. By the way, we're new on Instagram. Feel free to follow us there, The Unattached. I think it's _unattached because The Unattached was taken.
Yeah.
But yeah, decide who to be and go be it.
I would tend to agree. Time is your most valuable commodity. It is quite literally the only thing, as far as we know, and universe is known and unknown, that you cannot get back.
Right.
And I think I mentioned when you asked me favorite books, I think it's Seneca on shortness of time. He goes into it pretty deeply. So if you want to get a little bit of a mind-blowing, like, you know, ruin your weekend kind of a read,
Just
check it
hang
out.
And throw that down and then decide what you're doing with your life.
Wonderful summation. Oh, and to sum up the second kind of thing we touched on, talk to yourself more. Get to know yourself.
Ask yourself important questions.
Yeah.
Is this the best use of my time? Am I interested or committed? How true is that?
Is this serving my purpose?
All amazingly powerful questions.
Very much so.
And if you can be true with yourself, as you would want to be with anyone, you'll find your answers a little bit more smoothly.
Well, I just think there's the thing that I think, you know what? There's no reason to ever hide from yourself. It is a massive disservice to who you are and the light that you bring to the world.
I can't add anything to that except for whoosh.
Whoosh!
You are appreciated.
High
Theresa.
five. You're appreciated as well, Mr. Stanley.
She is Theresa Horezga.
He's Ryan Stanley.
We appreciate your time. We appreciate you, honestly, taking time to listen to this. It means a lot to us. And so feel free to, if you see us on any social media, to leave us some comments. We'd love feedback and spread the word about The Unattached. We hope that you get attached to us. See you next time.
Bye.